Hi, I'm Dr. Dave Janda. Welcome back to our Insider Insight Show. I am honored to have with me someone who recently came on our Operation Freedom radio show, Gene Ho. And when his interview finished, there's very few times this happens in the 8.5 years I've done the radio show. The switchboard lit up like a freaking Christmas tree of people saying, you got to get Gene back. He was phenomenal. Well, for our Insider Insight Show, we are bringing the great Gene Ho back, who is not only a phenomenal photojournalist, but he's a phenomenal writer. Now, I refer you to this book. This book is Gene's baby, Trumpography. And it's brilliant in so many respects. Not just the photojournalism that comes out that Gene is so superb at, but also, and this is something I didn't know before I sat down and read the book, he's a fantastic writer. The book is full of fantastic stories and perspective of an individual who had the opportunity to be tapped by Donald Trump in the 2016 campaign to be his photojournalist. A little background on Gene. He is the author of Trumpography, and you can get the book at GeneHo, GeneHo.com, or Amazon. Go to GeneHo.com, it's easier. But Gene shares his behind-the-scene experiences on the 2-year presidential campaign trail and what he learned about Donald J. Trump, his family, his staff, and the Americans who saw him in the true hope and change, and shares real stories. This is the brilliance of this book. Not just the great photographs, but the stories of what became a very grueling campaign, as well as perceptions of the character of Donald J. Trump, now the 45th president of the United States, which, as Gene points out, is markedly different than what the bought-off lamestream fake media has presented as far as who Donald Trump is. Gene also shares how his book experienced intense censorship, and not hard to believe, but intense censorship, as opposed to those anti-Trump books that were hoisted to the top of the New York Times bestseller list. You can learn more about Gene Ho at GeneHo, GeneHo.com. Gene, it's an honor to have with you today.
Hello, how are you? This is great. Thank you very much for having me on. And I tell you, everyone I talk to that I've been telling them I'm going to be on your show, you have a lot of fans, a lot of listeners. It's wonderful.
Well, that's very kind of you to say so. And, we do have a very loyal base of freedom fighters who actually are activists. And yes, they're not afraid of stepping forward and networking information. And it's my hope what they'll also do after today's interview is network your book. Because it really is a very important piece of work. Gene, many people ask, and have asked me because they knew you were going to be on today, have Gene explain how he became, how he first got in touch or came to meet Donald Trump, and how he became his photographer, not only photographer, but photojournalist for what is perhaps, many people believe, the most amazing political campaign in American history.
Oh, well, here's the story about it. It was never really ever planned. I was at an event where there was a lot of candidates there. There was Ben Carson, there was Ted Cruz, and Donald Trump is there. And I'm like, I want to get a chance to meet him. So I met him, took pictures of him. Didn't think anything of it. After the event, I emailed his staff some pictures. Never even thought anything of it. And whoa, 3 weeks later, he actually gives me a handwritten note saying, Gene, love the photos. And here's the interesting thing about it, Dr. Dave. He invited me to one event. This was about maybe 3 or 4 months before he even officially ran. Did that for him. But here's the interesting story. About 2 days later, he was doing another event. And I wasn't invited. I wasn't hired to do that event. I just woke up at 4 a.m., put on a suit, and drove 3 or 4 hours down to that location and just showed up. And I was nervous, scared, but I just showed up and lo and behold, they saw me there, they liked me, and they had me there for the rest of the time. So it was wonderful.
Gene, you have an incredible track record of being a photojournalist well before Donald J. Trump came into your life and you came into his life. you have been a photojournalist for a number of celebrities across the board.
Yes. I mean, this is a 30-year career, actually. 30-year career that I did.
So my question, Gene, is your first impression when you met Donald Trump and how it compared or contrasted with all those other celebrities that you had an opportunity to photograph and to get involved with?
Well, here's the thing. When it comes to celebrities, it's always a scary thing because I've had people that I've really admired over the years. When I was a child, I had some posters in my room, and you see these people that you admire so much, and then later on in my career, I met some of these, took their photos, and it was always disappointing because sometimes you'll find someone that you just really admire, and then you meet them in real life, and you're like, this guy's a total jerk. And so,
Right.
so I thought, I'll be honest, I thought the same thing of Donald Trump at first, because I always admired him, grew up in New York and knew a lot about him, bought all his books, but I really thought, I bet you anything when I meet him in real life that he's going to be an absolute jerk. And I honestly felt that. But I am telling you that when it comes to Donald Trump, and anyone who knows him personally and met him will say that he is a wonderful, wonderful person, treats everyone around him with dignity, and it's exact opposite of what the mainstream media has portrayed him as. But I can tell you, because I've known him and I've watched him for over 2 years, he's a really, really nice guy, treats people around him really nicely.
Gene, have you noticed a difference in him and his demeanor and how he treats you and those around him that you observe? Because, as a photojournalist, you're taking pictures, you're documenting the individual, but you also get a really bird's eye view of the landscape around that person, how that person treats his coworkers or the people working for him, how the quote fan base. Have you noticed a difference between when you first met Donald Trump at the beginning of the campaign trail versus President Trump 2.5 years later?
Well, here's the thing. I've not only photographed Trump during the campaign for 2 years, but I also photographed President Trump after he already became president. I can tell you he has not changed. And here's the difference of what I know and what other people don't know. I had a chance, if I wanted to, quite frankly, to lie and say to people, hey, I saw Donald Trump personally for 2 years, and I know what he's really like. And if I wanted to lie, I cannot even imagine what my book would go off on the market as an advance, because some people are writing very bad things about Trump, and they're getting $1 million advances. Could you imagine if I said, hey, I'm going to write this book and I'm going to tell some lies about what I saw or whatever? Could you imagine how much I could peddle that book for? But instead, I have no reason to lie. I was there behind the scenes. I seen how he interacted with people. And Trump treats everyone around him with dignity.
Bar none.
No, more than bar none. He would go into a room and he would not search out the celebrities in the room. I was backstage. He would search out the first responders, the police officers, the men in uniform. He would actually seek them out, shake their hands, and have conversations with them before he even shook hands with anyone backstage, which a senator or a celebrity. He would always go to the first responders in the room.
Now, Gene, you have Chinese American heritage.
Correct.
A minority.
Correct.
Donald Trump has been characterized, vilified, as being an incredible racist, bigot, homophobe. I think actually Jack the Ripper had better had better things said about him. Have you ever, and obviously as being a Chinese American and a minority, you are sensitive to when you come in contact with an individual who has, I would think, the least bit of racism. Have you ever witnessed Donald Trump being a racist, a bigot, a homophobe?
100% no. The media is making a false narrative. And that is the difference between me and someone else. I was there behind the scenes as a minority. People that have grown up with racism, which I have, much prejudice growing up. I am a Chinese-born American, so I'm here. I am a citizen, but I am very, very sensitive to people that are racist. I am sensitive to my son, who's mixed race, and I've seen Trump behind the scenes. I've seen how he interacted with other people, but I also seen how he interacted with my son personally. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to tell you that when he met my son, he looked at my son and he doted on him like he would his own grandson. And he looked at my son and he didn't need to fake anything because I'm a worker. It's not like I'm a constituent that he has to fake it. This is behind the scenes, backstage. And so I could tell you that Trump is not a racist at all. There are a lot of people like me, minorities. Diamond and Silk are one of them. Candace Owens is another, that have personally met Trump and could tell you that he's not a racist. We are the people that actually know him. So we are the ones that can say if he's a racist or not.
Those folks that are saying that, then, Gene, from your experience, and you've been around the guy, 24/7. And let's face it, some of the times you're around him, it's at, 1 o'clock in the morning after a long campaign day when people are worn out and exhausted. You've never, ever experienced or watched or seen or heard him with any type of bigoted comment, racial comment that was that could be construed as him being a racist.
That is exactly the point. See, I was his photographer, but I'm not there 24 hours buddy with him. Hey, what's up? I am behind the scenes watching him interact. I am the fly on the wall. I was behind the scenes in meetings, closed door meetings, where it's just him and a Secret Service detail. Like I was the only other worker there. So I seen him behind the scenes. Long days, short days. I have never seen anything remotely that could be construed as racist. And as I said again, I don't have to lie. I don't have to lie one way or the other way. But especially, could you just imagine how much money I could make right now saying, hey, I saw him behind the scenes, and I saw this, and that, and I could lie. And I could make a lot of money doing it. But it's not what I saw. It is absolutely not what I saw.
Gene, I've had the opportunity for over 30 years working in healthcare policy, in addition to being an orthopedic surgeon, now retired, but in doing healthcare policy when I first started doing some work with Ronald Reagan, actually C. Everett Koop, the then Surgeon General, on healthcare policy, healthcare reform. And over time, I got to know a number of folks in the Secret Service and in law enforcement that were involved in protective details for the president. And you can tell me if my impression's wrong. When I speak to those individuals about past presidents, they, across the board, and spoke very warmly of President Reagan, for example, and Mrs. Reagan, how they were treated. When I spoke to them about the Clintons or the Obamas, I'll be diplomatic, it wasn't, they did not have a warm, fuzzy feeling toward either of those families based on how they were treated. Yet when I speak to some folks that have been involved in the protection of President Trump, his wife Melania, their family, they again speak warmly, very, very similar warm feeling as they did about the Reagans. When you speak to these, and you've had significant interactions with protective details around not just the Trumps, but I imagine some other folks, what do you hear?
Well, here's the very interesting thing about that. When I went to these events, I was backstage, and many times, once Secret Service came, I had to check in maybe 2 or 3 hours earlier and just sit in the back VIP room waiting for Trump to get there to do the photos. People weren't in yet. So a lot of times, many times, it's just me by myself and one Secret Service agent that is basically guarding this one area. And so I spent literally hours talking to Secret Service agents of many of them. and we've had a lot of conversations. And one of the things, the common theme was how well Trump treated the Secret Service. I know this because I also knew before, 1 year before, I spent a lot of time with Trump's personal bodyguards, his personal detail, before he got Secret Service. But the interesting thing, when it comes to the Secret Service, they all spoke tremendously about Trump because he treated them with dignity. And you can imagine, I've heard all the stories of the other people that they have guarded, and they still do their job, but they all had, or most of them, I don't even think I heard one positive. They were all negative because the other people that they were protecting did not treat them with dignity, but treated them as workers. And that was a difference.
Gene, when you got to know President Trump, then Citizen Trump, now President Trump, what surprised you most about the man?
I think what really surprised me about it is that, number one, his energy level. Yeah. His energy level is unusual, to say the least. Near the end of the campaign, it was very grueling. I know I was getting sick. Even like people around me, my wife was getting sick. Just having to deal with the schedule. Near the end, we were doing 3. I think we topped out at 4 rallies per day. So we're talking like 10 a.m., then 1 o'clock, and then all the way throughout till the end of the day. I'll tell you this about it. I was getting sick. People were getting sick. We were getting tired. But here's the thing. Of what you know of Donald Trump and you seeing him, the nation seeing him now almost every single day for 4 or 5 years, have you ever seen him have like a cold or like he's, I got a sore throat today?
No.
I don't know what it is with this guy, but he has an energy level I could not have even imagined. He's almost never sick that I ever seen him. He has a lot of strength in what he's doing.
It's interesting because his last rally in the 2016 campaign ended here in Michigan, in Grand Rapids. And it was at, I think, 1 o'clock in the morning.
Yep.
And here he was. He was ready to go. He was there with Ted Nugent. He was there. I mean, he was ready to go, man. I mean, just let's go. You know, I mean.
With Michigan on that last day, I believe that day there was 3 of them. There was 3 rallies on that day. So, I mean, the very last day, he was still going. And most of us, I know I was, once it was done, I was tired, and he was still going.
I want to tell you a little story that you're not aware of. I do my radio station at Wham Talk 1600. We're an independent station that there's no editorial limits on what we can do and how we can do it. And it was started by 2 fantastic people, Faye Roan, who also does a show there, and his wife, Linda Hughes, who at the time had been diagnosed with metastatic breast cancer. And the station went all out to try to get the honest, independent information out about President Trump and his campaign. And in fact, several of his children did interviews on our station within the 24 hours of the election. It's interesting. And this is the type of people that you'll never hear from the bought-off, lamestream fake media. When the campaign was over and the results had come in, they took the time to call back and thank everyone at the station for their help and support, not only with the campaign, but believing in the movement. Linda, a year ago, passed away. She's the reason why I got into radio. Linda passed away from metastatic breast cancer. And her husband, Faye Roan, sent a letter to Donald Trump telling about how they bought this radio station and nurtured it. And here it is in this bastion of craziness in the People's Republic of Ann Arbor to have a free, a free market, freedom-based radio station. It's the only one in the country like it, where content is just, rip your head off type of honesty. And he wrote this letter about how Linda was dedicated to making sure that our country was in good hands, and that's why she supported President Trump. He sent that letter to President Trump 2 months ago. He got a response last week, a handwritten letter thanking him and Linda for everything that they have done. And first of all, that a lot of credit goes to the staff, his staff, for realizing, wow, this is really a heartfelt letter and the president needs to know about this. So credit first goes to them. And it also goes to him for taking the time and effort to respond to a grieving husband who is actually a very proud supporter. And I think that's a testament, Gene, to everything that you've written about in your book, the pictures, the written word, but also your spoken testimony about the man.
I mean, I think if people could see all the stories, and this is not just mine, but like they're coming out, but if people could really see the man for what he is a wonderfully caring person that really cares about the country. And for the life of me, I cannot see why so many people are against him and all he's doing. A lot of the stuff that I saw behind the scenes, they never even used or exploited it. Like there was a lot of stories behind the scenes. And like now I believe it's starting to all come out, stories like that, where people can actually start to tell the story of this person that is now our president.
Gene, my dad had some interactions with Donald Trump 30-some years ago. My dad was involved in the construction industry in Chicago, had some interactions with then citizen Trump, Donald Trump. Found him to be incredibly analytical, very smart, very honest, and was surrounded with very good people. Have you also found that the people around him, a lot of people in his position surround themselves with yes people, right? You can't, they're always there to tell him, you're right, boss. My dad 30 years ago said, Donald Trump surrounds himself with really honest, analytical people who he values their input and especially values them asking questions. What's your take? Because you've been on the inside.
Right. One of the things I do remember, it was a sad day for the campaign. I'm trying to think of which one he lost, but I think it was the very first one because he was doing so well and everyone thought he just marched right through it. And if you remember, I believe he lost the first one, Iowa. He lost that. And I remember him being very upset. He is a tough boss. He will expect certain things. But I remember being backstage and him, for lack of a better word, being very upset with the staff of the way it was going. And he said his piece. He did not curse, but he was very forceful in what he expected. But I will never, ever forget it because after that, he pointed to all of us and he says, just get it done. And I love that because there was a certain amount of trust that he had,
right,
that he didn't need to micromanage, okay, now you do this, now you do this, and now you do this. He took his staff and the people around him, and he knew and trusted that he hired the right people for the job. And then, yes, he did get upset at us because it was an embarrassment to us. It was an embarrassment to him that he lost Iowa. And then if you remember, he rolled it the rest of the way. I think it was New Hampshire, then South Carolina, Super Tuesday. But I remember him saying, just get it done. And it was very forceful. And we're like, okay, we are tired. We've been doing this for a while. We've been at this over a year, but it was time to get going again. And he trusted us. And I always love that about him, that he took the time to say, listen, I get it, but I trust you. Just get it done.
Gene, in addition to being around the president, you're also around a lot of members of the media, yes, what I call the bought-off lamestream fake media. Okay? Gene, you've seen those people behind the scenes as well.
Yes.
I believe these people are propagandists who are willfully manipulating what President Trump is like to the American people, to harm
yes,
him. Are there any people that you came in contact with in what I call the bought-off lamestream fake media that you believe are honest and you trust?
Not offhand, but I will say it on the opposite side. And I have another person there, one of the conservative-leaning persons that I was with, that we saw it firsthand. We're at a rally, we go outside, and there's this small group of protesters. I'm telling you, there was probably easily 10,000 people there, or 5,000, I can't remember what it was. But outside there was a small group of maybe about 10 protesters. And the only proof I have is I know the person that was with me at the time. The cameras all surrounded them. And I have a friend that will tell you that right there the camera person said, "Okay, ready? Go." And they started chanting anti-Trump things. It was orchestrated. And like I wish I had a video camera to do it, but it's only my word and another person that will tell you. We saw that. Ready, go. And then they started chanting, and then they filmed it. It was insane what was happening. And there are many good people in the media, but it's a lot of them are really, really against them, and they get triggered easily with anything Trump does.
Gene, you've had firsthand knowledge and experience, and in your profession, you become probably the most astute observer around these celebrities, around now President Trump. If he came to you and said, "Gene, going to war today, I'm only allowed one person in the Foxhole with me that I know has my back 110% of the time. Gene, who should I choose to have in the Foxhole with me?" What would you tell him?
You know what? Any one of the patriots in the United States of America, any one of them, all us have his back. The people that voted for him have his back. And the difference is we are not scared any longer. We used to be the silent majority. We're not silent anymore. Any of them. Pick any one of the patriots that voted for him, that believe in America. They will fight for him. Trump will fight for us.
You also have an opportunity to have watched President Trump and his family. I am a huge fan of his wife. I think, yeah, she's a beautiful woman, but I think she's even smarter than she is beautiful. I truly believe she's one of his best advisors. I also believe his kids, they all turned out fantastic. And you don't end up with fantastic kids if you're a cruddy parent. What surprised you most about Melania Trump and the children?
You know, a lot of times, and I won't name names, but you guys could use your imagination. You see these very, very, very wealthy families. And they're wealthy that way because there was someone along the way who's very astute, can do it, and just made a name for themselves and became wealthy. You guys could use your own imagination. You look at all these families of great wealth, and then you look at their children, and the children are a disaster.
Right.
The difference is, you look at Trump, and you look at their children, you can't fake that. They are all very, very nice people. Very nice people, and the way they treated the campaign staff around them, they didn't need to. They could have been like the boss's kid and just, speak down to the people that were around them. They didn't do that. But they are all very accomplished. They're all very smart. Melania is brilliant. Mm-hmm. Eric Trump is brilliant. Eric's wife, Laura Trump, just brilliant. All these people are wonderful people, and just you cannot fake family at all.
Gene, when the family gets together, there are certain families when they get together, the head of the family, the patriarch, it's all about them. There are other families when they get together, it's all about everybody else other than the patriarch. When the Trump family gets together, who's it about?
Well, I've seen them at times. One of the times was right before Thanksgiving. But the thing is, they're not what I see from them, especially during the holiday times, they are not like, they're a real family. Mm-hmm. They have the same issues that other people have, except for now they're the first family. Is just like anyone else. I cannot even begin to tell you how real they are. And I remember even seeing their youngest, Barron. And, at times he was with them because it was during the holays at some of these campaign rallies. And at the time, he's just a kid, and he really didn't really want to be there. And I could see Trump just like he would that I would with my son when I take him on to a speaking event or something. He really doesn't want to be there, but he's going with me, and that's because he knows that after we finish something, that we'll go swimming at the pool or we're going to go to the zoo the next day. And it was very real with that because I've seen how they interact, and they're a real family. They want to spend time with each other. They love each other, but it's just like they're just like anyone else. And I think that's the difference between them and, not that I know them all, but the average billionaire, if you could say it that way.
The president has been criticized for his utilization of Twitter. You are a communicator. I mean, that you communicate through your lens, you communicate through your writing, you communicate through your book. Your take on his use of Twitter, because it drives the bought-off lamestream fake media. It drives, I believe, I don't even call them progressives anymore. I call them oppressives. It drives, right, the deep state crazy. As a professional communicator, what's your take? Because many people are say he should get away from Twitter. This is bad. Well, what's the professional say, Gene?
Well, when it comes to Twitter, the reason why Donald Trump is our president today is he bypassed the mainstream media and started talking directly to the American people. The way he did that is he said, and that's why the media hates him so much, for lack of a better word, I don't need you. I have this Twitter account that reaches straight to the American people. And I love it because most of the time, as you know, when he's doing something on Twitter and everyone goes crazy with it, he's trolling the media. He's totally trolling them. And it's funny, and the people that do know and that are awake see that, and we're laughing at it. But that is what is better than anything. The Twitter there gives them a chance to bypass the mainstream media.
Gene, when you were in our radio show, I got feedback from some people outside that window a lot of feedback from the People's Republic of Ann Arbor. And frankly, Gene, you scared the heck out of a lot of them. And here's what they said. Well, I'm from the People's Republic, as you call it, the People's Republic of Ann Arbor, which I don't think is accurate. But these people said, and I'm kind of bringing all of it together. They said, we didn't vote for Trump. We don't like Trump. But then we listened to that interview with Gene Ho. You scared the hell out of them, Gene, because they said, and this is what they said. They said, it was so raw and honest. The information Gene Ho presented, I actually started to like the guy. And then they said, and I've always despised him for how he uses Twitter. Because, Gene Ho spoke about how nice he was behind the scenes and how he treated people so fairly and honestly. But yet he hammers people really hard, calls them names on Twitter. And how do we reconcile the person that Gene Ho presented and the guy who hammers people on Twitter, calling them whatever it is, pencil neck Schiff I think is the last one, right? So what do you tell him, Gene? What is this yin and yang, or is it that the guy is utilizing Twitter to troll people, to pull a lot of these people out so they keep making even more mistakes? What is it, Gene?
I think it's so funny when people say that. And this is the difference, and this is how real that Trump is. I was his photographer. I'll be honest. There were times Trump got on my case about things. Either I wasn't fast enough, the color balance in my camera was not to his liking. I was backstage, all kinds of lighting, different places, and I had to get it all right. He was spot checking me at times. He got on my case a couple of times because I couldn't do it right. There were, I'm not fast enough, and so. But here's the thing: he knows how to separate work, and he knows how to separate personalized relationships. We really want a commander-in-chief that is tough.
Yeah.
And he's a tough guy. He's a tough boss to work for. But the difference when it comes to that is at the end of the day, he's a really, really nice guy. He's a nice guy. He's just, the difference is he gets things done.
So I grew up an orthopedic surgeon, okay? And across the board, to generalize, orthopedic surgeons are pretty much jerks. And many people say that, but the interesting thing, I think it's a bit of a misinterpretation in the sense that I've been around a lot of surgeons who are tough on everybody else, and they're not as tough on themselves. The best surgeons I've been around are tough on everyone else because, let's face it, if you make a mistake in the operating room, you could kill somebody. Not just you, but your staff. They're not only tough on other people, demand the best, but they're actually even tougher on themselves. Those are the best surgeons. If Donald Trump was a surgeon, would he be the one that we characterize as demands the most out of his staff, but demands more out of himself, or demands most out of his staff and demands little out of himself?
The best way I could describe this, and it's not through my eyes, but it'll be through your own eyes and your listeners' eyes. When you get a chance sometime, and I'm sure it's all on YouTube, you can search it, but search out some of Trump's earlier campaign speeches. I know some of them won't even be archived, but I was there when he was speaking in rooms of maybe 50 to 100 people. At that time, his speaking ability, even though he was on TV and everything, was not what you see later on. And during the process, I seen him at times improve on what he was doing. He is, to be that successful in life, you have to be the type of person that can look at yourself and say, I need to make improvements here, here, and here. And that's how Trump was, and that's how he did with all his stuff, not only with the presidency and everything else. Look at how well the country is doing now since the first day he took office. It is, quite frankly, it's pretty much smooth running right now. He's doing really well.
Is Donald Trump afraid of criticism?
No, he is 100% not afraid of criticism. I know I didn't criticize him, but I know of people who have and told stories about criticizing him in a way. But one of the things that he has always said about the mainstream media, he goes, and I believe I heard him say it so many times, he goes, I don't care if you're tough. If you're going to call me out on something, call me out on it. Yeah. But just don't make up lies and don't invent stuff to talk about.
Keep it fair and honest. Keep it fair and honest.
If you call him out on something, he does not. In my book, I talk about stories about how tough he is sometimes. But, the thing is, he doesn't care about that. He doesn't need it spoon-fed from how great and wonderful he is. He just wants it honest.
Do you believe his relationship with his wife, Melania, is where she has comfort in saying to him, Donald, you did this. Why? Maybe next time, why don't you do it this way? Do you think there's a comfort level that she does that?
I don't know, but I'm sure, because I do know this, that for every accomplished man or every accomplished wife, that they have a spouse with them that is not afraid to tell them what it is. And believe me, I know this because I have a wife that is not afraid to tell me when I'm looking stupid.
I'm in that category as well. Yes, right. So, now, Gene, we just got the Mueller Report.
Yes.
Right? And the folks out there in, the People's Republic were coming down on me for the past 2 years because I kept saying, nothing's going to happen here. There was no Russian collusion. First of all, did you ever see any Russians or any foreign, you would characterize saying, well, this is kind of odd? And you were around him for years. Have you ever seen anything like that around him?
when it first came out, I know some of the other staff was like, what in the world are they talking about? This is going to be over in a couple of weeks, because everyone there knew why Trump won. He won because he reached directly to the people.
Yep.
He did rallies on nonstop on end, and he contacted directly to the people through his Twitter, through his message. And so when this all came out, I thought it was a joke that would honestly last 2 weeks and it would be like the next cycle and be all over. The president is now exonerated. There was no collusion. There never was. And I'm just surprised it took 2 years or that long for everyone to see it. But when I was there, I mean, I thought that whole thing would be over in 2 news cycles. I couldn't believe it went that long.
Well, Gene, anyone around him essentially faces censorship. This 2-year, I call it a goat rodeo, of this fake Russian hoax was essentially a censorship of his winning of his election, of his campaign, of his election, of his first 2 years in office. You as well have faced censorship for producing your book, Trumpography, that points, just here are the facts of who the man is. Not just in pictures, but in writing. You have faced censorship. Educate our viewers on the censorship that you have faced. Because as you said earlier, Gene, if there was one iota of negativity in this, even if it was false, this would have been number 1 on the New York Times bestseller list.
Yeah, and that really, before this happened, I told people that I was coming out with a book, and the difference is everyone thought it would be only pictures. So here the book comes out, and it's stories. I've had book signings at bookstores that invited me and then disinvited me once they saw what the book was about. Online, I had a bookseller. You could guess who it is. Mm-hmm. They took all my 5-star reviews and deleted them. Oh. And then when Trump Nation came to call them out on it, they said, oh, it was just an accident. Oh, it was just an accident.
Right.
It was a glitch.
Right. A glitch.
I've had interviews that we've done, taped them, and then lo and behold, afterwards, once it gets to the higher executive levels, they say, "Oh, well, we're not gonna play that interview." Why I am so dangerous and why this book is so dangerous is I was there for 2 years as a fly on the wall. I wasn't buddies with him. Yes, I was friends with him. Yes, Trump likes me, but I'm not talking about me having a personal relationship where every day we're hanging out, buddy, what's up? I was watching the guy. That's my job. I was watching how he interacted with people. And so I'm writing what I saw, and that's the difference. This is over a 2-year period, and by the time I finished the book, I was already photographing the president as the president of the United States. I seen the behind-the-scenes things, and it has triggered the left. It really has, because it's not what they have been told to believe about Donald Trump.
Gene, I speak about when I first went on air 8.5 years ago, I spoke about when I first came to Washington and was told that the right-left axis was theater, that the real axis was the up-down axis, up being freedom and down being oppression, hence the name of our platform, Operation Freedom, in the radio show. And that there was this group of people behind the scenes that were intent in stripping freedom from individuals and trying to oppress individuals. Now, the names globalist syndicate, deep state were not used back in 88. But that's what was being described. When I first started speaking about that on air, that was in my first show back in October of 88, many people call the station and say, well, this guy seems pretty reasonable, but he's a conspiracy theorist. This group about... Gene, many people still deny that there is a deep state, and that the deep state is not only present, but in fact the responsible party behind this attempted coup of Donald Trump and his presidency. What's your take? Is there a deep state? And do you believe, if there is that who is behind this attempted coup behind President Trump?
Let's do it this way, in a way that all of us can understand, including the left, including the right, and including all of the patriots. let's forget the word deep state just for a second. Let's forget all of that. Trump ran on a unique platform. His platform was drain the swamp. So, what do you think has been going on? Trump has been cleaning out the elements. Call it the deep state, I don't care what you call it. But the swamp. Some people that have left are authentically good people. Not everyone that has been fired is the swamp. Some were there for a short time and left. So not everyone that has gotten fired or dismissed is a swamp. But this much I can tell you, that Trump doesn't lie. When he says he's going to drain the swamp, call it whatever you want to call it. But he says he's going to drain the swamp, and every one of us, the left, the right, know exactly what that means. Unless, for the left, really, honestly, unless, for the left, is Donald Trump the enemy? Is he the swamp? Is he the bad person? Or is he the type that says, I'm going to come in as an outsider and clean it up? We all know it. The Patriots know it. The left know it. Just deal with it, man.
Gene, when do you believe he won the election?
I felt confident when I saw Trump the last week right before the election. And I felt that way because I seen Trump totally relaxed two times, totally relaxed. One was right after he got Secret Service protection. And I think he felt very confident because now he was playing in the big leagues. And I remember him that day when he saw me. I mean, he was just like so, for lack of a better word, he was very extremely kind to me that day, giving me fist bumps. Hey, this is my man, this is my man. And it made me feel good because all the other times it was all work and nothing else. So after Secret Service, he came to me and we're just like, I felt wonderful because he just really enjoyed my company at the time. Didn't get on my case about anything, and it was great. But then the only other time that I really, really saw him like that was probably a week before the election. And I know that because I know how he is. And like when he has immense patience with me, with what I'm doing, I was even setting up a shot, and he says, do you want to try an alternate angle? And like, I never even heard him say that. Like, it's usually, everyone's like, let's go, let's go, let's go, let's go. But he was so relaxed, and I knew at that time, it was 1 week before election, I knew that he would win. Like, he felt confident that he had the votes.
I'll tell you when I believe he won the election.
All right.
When he turned to Hillary Clinton, and she was blah, blah, blah. And in the debate. And he said, with what you did, we would appoint a special investigator, prosecutor, and you would go to jail. You see, I believe that struck a chord amongst the American people that said, this guy's talking about reestablishing the rule of law, where there's one rule of law for us nobodies and no rule of law for the Clintons, the Bushes, the Obamas of the world. I believe that's when he won it. Now, here's my question, Gene. Many people believe that President Trump will not hold the Clintons and other individuals' feet to the fire. I disagree with those individuals. He just said something on Hannity the other night. My impression is Donald Trump just doesn't say something to say something. When he says something, he means something. Do you believe he is intent on reestablishing the rule of law for everybody and not just the nobodies?
Again, it's very interesting that a lot of people think that the centerpiece of his campaign is the wall, and I get it. Because that is what the mainstream media, and it is, that was a campaign promise, but that is what the mainstream media wants everyone to focus on, is just a wall. His campaigning was on drain the swamp. He was campaigning to fix America and the parts in America, the swamp, that don't work with it. He was intent on getting them out, and if justice needs to be served, it needs to be served. But people have to remember the cornerstone, the keystone of his campaign was drain the swamp. And he's going to do it, and he's already doing it.
Prior to you becoming the photojournalist for Donald Trump, Were you aware, Gene, in all your interactions with celebrities, of the swamp, the deep state, if you will?
No, and it's almost embarrassingly I say that because I had no clue. I had no clue of how things really worked. People have talked before about, this false left-right paradigm, and I get it. But I really didn't know how much, I guess, the system was against Trump, and I seen it. And without, calling out some of the people, even on the Republican side, they really didn't want Trump around. A lot of them just wanted the status quo.
Yes, that's right.
Now, we're here. Trump knows how to get people to work together, and I've seen it with people working together on basically both sides of the aisle in some cases. But my point with that, when it comes to all of this, in the beginning, they didn't want Trump. If you remember, he was the joke guy at first.
Right.
And then the joke guy started gaining traction, and then people became frightened of him. But I hope with all this stuff that's going on, with the Mueller report already done, that Trump is ready to move on. But I can guarantee you, I think Trump is going to settle the score in a lot of this, and he's going to expose how this all came about with the Mueller report in the first place. So
he has always said, and you reiterated this, you can criticize me, but be fair and be honest about it. Gene, you know the man inside out. Would you want him to be mad at you for you being dishonest and being slanderous and libelous to him? Would you want to have him as someone who now is going to pay you back?
You have to remember, this is the man that made famous the word "you're fired." Right. He is a person that expects a certain level of professionalism in everything that you do. And if you don't fit in that category, then you can be gone, and he's going to get rid of you with that, and you're not going to be part of this government the way that we know it. And that's the whole thing of what I saw. And I think part of it is that the people around him that were working around him all knew this. I know this. It was a badge of honor to go from the very front of the campaign 3 months before he even officially ran, and I worked till the very last day. And even after that, I came out with this book, but I also photographed the president since then, which to me, at least from my behalf, it just reminds me that, hey, you know what? It was a tough road, but I felt like I was part of what needed to happen. And that's the same with everything else. He invented the word "you're fired."
I want to end the interview with this, with Gene. You are a player in the Chinese American community. The Chinese American community, politically, I think it's safe to say, has not been centered, if you will, on a conservative type of political philosophy. Am I wrong in that?
No. Well, here's the thing with the Chinese American community. They actually fall into two categories. They fall into the categories of Chinese Americans that are American, that are actually American and believe in freedom. And then you have the other type of Chinese, like that socialist Andrew Yang, who should actually move to China because his platform is based upon communism and socialism. The Chinese in America fall into two categories, and most of them fall into the category that they are Americans, just like I am, that believe in America and the principles of freedom, and especially the freedom of religion. The socialist thought and main design, especially what that socialist Andrew Yang is promoting, is total garbage.
And that's very important. That's very important, Gene, because he's acting like he is the spokesperson for the entirety of Chinese Americans and all minorities. And this is really a false platform that he is putting himself upon.
Andrew Yang, you are a joke and a disgrace to the Chinese that are living in America. Disgrace. The fact that you are even out there and that people actually are thinking that that's the way that the Chinese in America think, you are pathetic in what you're doing. It's an embarrassment because the Chinese in America are hardworking.
Yeah,
they
are.
Don't expect anything. We don't want the $1,000 or whatever that you're offering. We're here to work hard. And we as Americans, Chinese or whatever, we want and espouse freedom and freedom of religion and the freedom to work hard and the freedom to fail on our own.
You have spoken very clearly and succinctly about what Yang is trying to promote. Do you believe other leaders in the Chinese American community will have the courage that you have, Gene, and come forward and say that?
Well, here's the thing. The Chinese are like the rest of the patriots. Truth be told, none of us have our leader. Our leader is in our heart, it's in ourselves, and most of them believe in Jesus and believe in God. The difference is there is no difference between the Chinese. It's not a matter of me leading them or anyone else leading them. The difference is that each one of us espouse these things in our heart, and the difference is we are no longer afraid. A lot of us before, we used to be known as the silent majority. That included me, who was a coward and afraid to speak up for myself because I was afraid. I was afraid of what the mainstream media, they might call me a racist. It might harm my business. It might do this. We're not afraid anymore. None of us Americans, none of us patriots are afraid, and that includes the Chinese people living here. There's no leader. It's all within our hearts, and all of us saying, hey, we're not as scared anymore. But don't put this thing in front of us, this Andrew Yang guy, who a lot of America think that that's how the Chinese in America think, and we don't. Not even close.
Gene, do you believe that one of the reasons why you are comfortable speaking about Yang, speaking about the bought-off lamestream fake media, speaking about the censorship, do you believe some of that is because of your interactions with Donald Trump?
The one thing, and it's actually the theme of the book that I've written, the theme of the book is basically you have a person that has given us strength, and he's not, let's face it, if we wanted to pick what appears to be the best Christians, I will be honest, I met Ben Carson. He is an authentically great guy. He's probably the best choice if you just wanted a Christian that is what we're used to seeing as Christians. He's a great guy, Ben Carson. The difference is Trump claims to be a Christian, and I believe it, but he has given us and empowered us and made ourselves to be the leaders. Trump is not a leader. He just empowered us so that we could all become leaders on our own.
That's true.
And that we are not afraid, and that we can stand up for the things that we secretly believe in, but we're always too scared to talk about because we're scared of what people might say about us. But we're not scared anymore. None of us are. We're strong now, and then it's just going to keep on getting better.
Gene, I'd like to thank you for everything you have done, are doing, and will do. You're an incredibly gifted, not photojournalist, author, dad, husband, person, and patriot. I thank you, Gene, because it would be much easier, Gene, for you to speak negatively of the president or just not speak at all. And I thank you, Gene, for your courage. I encourage every person, Trumpography, go to Gene Ho, GeneHo.com. Best way to purchase the book and learn more about Gene. Until next time, this is Dave Janda signing off. Dream big and dare to fail. Thanks for your time today.
Thank you very much.